There was a moment in history when a building no larger than a city block held all the promise of a new nation, a house made of stone, perhaps scorched and scarred, but standing all the same. Presidents walked its halls, history unfolded in its rooms, and somehow, through fire and near collapse, it survived. Welcome to INFOMUNDO, where we break down fascinating, worldwide famous topics and bring them to your screen. And today, we are going to explain how the White House was rebuilt from its own ashes. So sit back tight and let's go for this historical adventure. A house built from Virginia sandstone and audacious dreams. It wasn't just a residence. It was power, democracy, and resilience all compressed into one neoclassical marvel. What if we told you that this architectural icon began with a $500 design competition, was burned to the ground by invading troops, rebuilt from ashes, and then, a century later, nearly collapsed from the inside out, forcing a complete reconstruction while keeping the walls standing? In 1791, in a young republic barely a decade old, President George Washington envisioned something bold: a brand new capital city along the Potomac River designed to rival Europe's grandest capitals. But every capital needs a president's house. In March 1792, a design competition was announced. The prize? $500 or a medal of equal value. Not exactly a fortune, but enough to attract attention. 9 proposals arrived. Among them was an anonymous entry widely believed to be from Thomas Jefferson himself, who had a passion for architecture. But Jefferson's design didn't win. The winner was James Hoban, a 30-year-old Irish immigrant who had arrived in America just 7 years earlier with nothing but ambition and architectural training from Dublin's Society of Arts. Hoban had studied under Thomas Ivory, and his winning design drew inspiration from Leinster House in Dublin, the elegant residence of the Duke of Leinster, which today houses the Irish Parliament. When President Kennedy visited Leinster House in 1963, he joked that Hoban probably incorporated its features to make it more home-like for any president of Irish descent. On July 16, 1792, Washington selected Hoban's plan, but he wasn't satisfied with its original scale. Washington insisted it be enlarged by 1/5 and built entirely of stone, not brick. On October 13, the cornerstone was laid, marking the beginning of 8 years of construction in what was then a dusty, barely inhabited swamp. The structure measured approximately 168 feet by 85 feet, rising 70 feet high. The construction cost? $232,372, roughly $4.8 million in today's money. Not cheap, but a bargain compared to European palaces. Yet, here's the irony. George Washington, the man who imagined this house, who insisted on its grandeur, never spent a single night inside. He died in December 1799, 1 year before President John Adams became the first to move in on November 1, 1800. And even then, the house was unfinished, with plaster still wet on the walls and stairs not yet installed. But who actually built this monument to democracy? And what materials transformed an Irish architect's drawings into American reality? Here's where the story becomes more complicated, human, and American in both its triumph and tragedy. Construction of the president's house required an army of workers in a nearly empty capital city. The problem? There weren't enough free laborers willing to work for low wages in harsh conditions. So the commissioners turned to enslaved labor. Enslaved African Americans and free workers from Maryland and Virginia cleared the land, cut down trees, quarried massive blocks of Aquia Creek sandstone, and transported them to the construction site. Scottish stonemasons laid the stones with precision, creating walls that would stand for centuries. In 1798, the porous sandstone received a lime-based whitewash to protect it from freezing and thawing, creating the iconic facade, though it wouldn't officially be called the White House until Theodore Roosevelt made it official in 1901. A May 1795 payroll document in the National Archives lists 5 enslaved carpenters: Peter, Ben, Harry, Daniel, and Tom. Their wages were signed by their owner, James Hoban, the architect who designed the building. These men crafted interior woodwork and built scaffolding, but never saw a penny of their earnings. Think about that. The man who designed the White House also owned the men who built it. Peter worked 28 days that month, valued at £10, 10 shillings. Ben, 28 days, also valued at £10, 10 shillings. Daniel worked 26 days, and Harry just 9. Their names survive in ledgers, but their stories remain largely untold. On November 1, 1800, President John Adams moved into the incomplete White House. And on the night of 2nd November, he wrote a letter to his wife, Abigail, with a prayer that would be carved into the state dining room mantelpiece 145 years later. I pray heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house, and all that shall hereafter inhabit it. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof. The walls stood. The dream lived. But how long would it last before fire turned triumph into tragedy? On August 24, 1814, the unfathomable happened. British troops invaded Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. This wasn't random destruction. It was calculated retaliation. The year before, American forces had burned public buildings in York, the capital of Upper Canada, now called Toronto. The British were returning the favor. Major General Robert Ross and Rear Admiral George Cockburn led 4,500 battle-hardened troops into the American capital after routing hastily assembled American forces at the Battle of Bladensburg. President James Madison and First Lady Dolly Madison had already fled. But Dolly made one crucial decision before leaving. She ordered the famous Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington saved and removed from the building. She refused to let it fall into British hands. When British soldiers arrived at the White House, they found something surreal. A meal still warm on the table. Accounts suggest they sat down, ate using White House china and silver, drank the president's wine, and then ransacked the rooms before setting the building ablaze. The fire was intense. Flames consumed the interior, destroying furniture, documents, and decorations. The sandstone walls blackened from smoke damage, but they survived. A violent thunderstorm and a rare tornado destroyed the fire's momentum that night, leaving a charred shell against the sky. Many Americans called for relocating the capital entirely. Some suggested moving it back to Philadelphia or New York. But President Madison refused. He appointed James Hoban, the original architect, to rebuild. Hoban reconstructed the White House over 3 years, from 1815 to 1817, salvaging some original materials and continuing to use whitewash to cover the smoke stains. By October 1817, President James Moore moved back in, symbolizing American resilience. The south portico, that iconic curved porch you see in every photo, was added in 1824. The north portico followed in 1829 under President Andrew Jackson, giving the White House its classic symmetrical appearance. The 1814 fire damage and Hoban's hasty reconstruction left structural compromises that would haunt the building for over a century. Quick fixes, patchwork repairs, and the weight from later additions would eventually bring the mansion to the edge of total collapse. But before we explain how the White House nearly fell apart from the inside, just a quick reminder. If you're liking this video so far, you'll love what else we've built here on INFOMUNDO. Check out the channel for more intriguing information on the world's most famous sights and stuff. By 1948, the White House was literally falling apart. Years of deferred maintenance during the Great Depression and World War II led to alarming signs of structural failure. Sagging floors, swaying chandeliers, and President Truman joking about haunting. In June 1948, a leg of Margaret Truman's piano pushed through the floorboards in the family sitting room, prompting urgent steel supports to prevent further collapse. Inspections revealed the grim reality. Interior walls lacked proper foundations and were settling into clay soil, pulling away from exterior walls. The grand staircase, built in the 1880s, was also in imminent danger of collapse. Truman faced a choice: demolish the White House or gut and rebuild the interior while preserving the historic exterior. As a lover of history, he chose the latter. On December 7, 1948, the Truman family moved to Blair House for nearly 4 years while the White House was dismantled and rebuilt. The Commission on the Renovation of the Executive Mansion oversaw a historic reconstruction project. Workers removed everything but the exterior sandstone walls and roof, installing new concrete foundations and a massive steel frame. By 1950, the White House stood as a hollow shell. Modern plumbing, electrical systems, central air conditioning, and a new basement were added, while historic elements like wooden beams and plaster moldings were carefully salvaged where possible. By March 1952, the Trumans returned to a house that looked identical outside but was entirely new within. The project cost $5.7 million, roughly $67 million today. Despite Truman's complaints, structural changes were significant, including a 2-story basement and relocating the grand staircase. Everything else was meticulously restored to its pre-renovation appearance. But what does the White House look like today, and how does it function as both a home and a global symbol? The White House is an architectural marvel spanning 6 floors and approximately 55,000 square feet dedicated to one family and the workings of American government. It features 132 rooms, including 16 family and guest rooms, 35 bathrooms, and 28 fireplaces, served by 3 elevators. The main kitchen can cater dinner for 140 guests, accommodating over 1,000 for larger events, requiring 570 gallons of white paint for its exterior, maintained with annual touch-ups and full repainting every 4 to 6 years. The complex is set on an 18-acre estate with a rose garden, tennis court, swimming pool, bowling alley, and putting green, staffed by around 90 residence employees, supplemented by security and operations personnel. Since John Adams in 1800, every president has made their mark. Theodore Roosevelt renovated the house and added the West Wing in 1902, which housed the first official presidential office. William Howard Taft expanded it and added the first Oval Office, and Franklin D. Roosevelt expanded it again in 1934, creating the modern Oval Office we see today. The East Wing, built in 1942, became office space for the First Lady's staff. Nevertheless, the White House has witnessed pivotal moments in history. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in the Lincoln Bedroom. Franklin Roosevelt planned for World War II from the Map Room, and John F. Kennedy navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis from the Cabinet Room. The double Scottish rose above the north door, carved by Scottish stonemasons in the 1790s, stands as a testament to the immigrant hands that shaped its history. This building is a collective achievement built by people from diverse backgrounds. But what stories does it continue to tell, and what legacy does it carry forward? The White House is more than architecture. It's a complex symbol of the American story, marked by contradiction and evolution. Its history reflects both the promise and the failures of democracy. It was burned down and rebuilt by the same architect. It endured decades of neglect and patchwork repairs, then was gutted and reimagined from within. Every president has left their mark, continually reshaping the space. The White House Historical Association now honors the enslaved laborers like Peter, Ben, Daniel, and Harry, whose contributions were long overlooked. Their forced labor made this symbol of democracy possible, and their stories must not be forgotten. First Lady Michelle Obama highlighted this complexity in a 2016 speech at the Democratic National Convention. "I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves."
And doing what needed to be done so that today I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves. And I watch my daughters, 2 beautiful, intelligent black young women, playing with their dogs on the White House lawn.
Her words reaffirmed the building's significance, acknowledging that the White House reflects America's flawed yet evolving journey toward its ideals. The mansion has witnessed moments that changed the world. It's been a fortress during war, a stage during peace, a museum of American history, and a functioning home for first families trying to find normalcy amid constant scrutiny. In 2007, the American Institute of Architects ranked the White House #2 on its list of America's favorite architecture. More than 500,000 visitors tour the White House annually, walking through the same staterooms where history was made, standing in spaces where enslaved workers once labored and presidents once governed. And through it all, it has remained what George Washington envisioned in 1791, a house for the people, built by the people, standing as proof that a democratic republic can endure, can rebuild after destruction, can evolve while honoring its past. Maybe your first glimpse of power wasn't in a person, but in a white building on a screen, with pillars that seemed to hold up the sky. You saw presidents walk through its doors, imagined history made within, and it became part of your understanding of America. That's the quiet legacy of the White House. Power needs not perfection, just perseverance. This building began as a $500 design by an Irish immigrant with a dream, built by hands both free and enslaved. It burned, rose again, and was saved through engineering and will. From Virginia's quarries to Dublin's drawing rooms, the White House stands as a monument to resilience. Its legend lies not just in its structure, but in the dream it represents. The democracy, endurance, and the story each stone and beam carries. And there you go, how the White House was made. Don't forget to share and subscribe to INFOMUNDO. If you're interested in Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars and want to know which one is better, then you must check out the video on the channel. And let us know in the comments what stuff we should dive into next.